Hello, I'm Stephen Mallory. I'm your friendly neighborhood hippie counselor. And since we are moving very close to the 60th anniversary of Edwin Fair Center, I thought it was appropriate and timely that I speak a little bit about Dr. Edwin Fair, our founder. Now, I'm going to be reading from some highlights here, so I hope you don't get offended that I've written down, and then I'm going to look down and I'm going to look back up. But, so, now, it is my hunch that many, if not most of you, could say little more about Dr. Fair than he was our founder. Well, he was more than our founder. He was a very unique, compassionate, and caring physician who had the dream that every person deserved quality mental health care regardless of their ability to pay. Now, when someone asks you where you work and you respond with, "I work at Edwin Fair," and the person asks the next question, "Well, who is Edwin Fair?" It's my hope that after watching this video, you will be able to say something more than, "Well, I think he was our founder, but I'm not sure." So, let's get started with a little history. This information is contained in Dr. Fair's autobiography called The Doctor's Fair. Okay? Joy has copies of this if you're interested, but I'm going to hit some of the highlights of this book, or things that I think it would be both interesting and helpful to know about Dr. Fair. So let's get started with a little bit of history. The book is filled with fascinating highlights. And if there were ever a chip off the old block, it is Dr. Fair. You see, in Dr. Fair's family, basically, you had two choices. Either you could become a doctor or you could become a Methodist minister. Well, Dr. Fair would undertake both of these vocations. Yes, he became an accomplished physician. However, he saw his practice of medicine as a ministry, as a life calling. And this is his understanding that he inherited from his father, Dr. Nathan Fair. Dr. Nathan Fair practiced medicine in the small rural town of Heavener, Oklahoma, in the Wichita Mountains of southeastern Oklahoma, near the Arkansas border. Now, when I say rural, I mean rural. Dr. Fair's father practiced medicine by horseback. Back in roads in the mountains where there were only trails, you could not even get in a horse and buggy. Well, the elder Dr. Fair graduated from the University of Louisville School of Medicine, a 3-year medical school, in 1903, at a time when most medical schools were just a year long. In the foreword of his book, Dr. Fair says this of his father, quote, "Papa's lessons to me were taught by example. He taught me the importance of being involved in the community, the importance of one's family. He helped me to develop a meaningful religious faith. He taught me that when one accepts a responsibility, he sees it through to the end, that any job worth doing is worth doing well. He had compassion and kindness. He genuinely cared for his people. His practice of medicine was his life calling. It was a service to mankind. It was his ministry, fully as much as his brothers who were Methodist ministers. As a physician, he had the privilege of coming into the lives and the hearts of many of his patients. And by his example, he taught me what it means to be a doctor." Today, it is perhaps hard to grasp and understand that Papa practiced medicine for more than 30 years without antibiotics to treat infectious diseases, no chemicals to treat cancer, with limited laboratory procedures that did not include x-rays, and without the benefit of a hospital. The only specific medicine at his disposal was quinine for malaria. For many years, the only general anesthesia he had was chloroform, and later ether. And by the way, his operating room was a portable operating table that he carried on his horse that he set up in the patient's kitchen. The most important things he did have for his patients was his excellent medical education, time, availability, and a genuine love for his patients. He listened to them, truly listened to them. He shared with them. He became an integral part of their lives. He was their doctor. He had their love, their respect, and their undying devotion. End quote. Well, it should be noted that making house calls by horseback with his father inspired the young Edwin Fair to follow in his father's footsteps. And so, to that end, in 1933, at the age of 18, Edwin Fair and a friend hitchhiked from Heavener to Oklahoma City, then to Norman to enroll in the University of Oklahoma, where they enrolled in pre-medical courses. And in 1936, he entered the University of Oklahoma School of Medicine. At that time, junior and senior medical students delivered babies in the homes of low-income residents in Oklahoma City. They were on call and worked as a team, with the senior medical student taking the lead. In his senior year of medical school, Dr. Fair oftentimes made obstetrical calls by himself. And in his words, he says this: "I remember vividly the first one in which I was alone. This was near the Wilson meatpacking plant outside of Oklahoma City. As I knocked on the door, a Caucasian woman, obviously pregnant, answered the door and asked, 'Are you the doctor?' I said, 'Yes, I am.' 'Well then, you better come in. I'm going to have this baby right away.' Dr. Fair asked, 'How many have you had?' She said, 'This is my 10th. He said, 'Well, lady, you probably know more about this than I do.' And within the next 10 minutes, she delivered a beautiful baby girl. There was no one else there. Her house was immaculately clean, and the delivery was totally uncomplicated. After he tied the umbilical cord and delivered the placenta, there was no evidence of hemorrhage. She got out of bed, cleansed and dressed the baby, and fixed them a cup of coffee." Dr. Fair's first wife, Christine, whom he married in his sophomore year of medical school, would often go with him on these obstetrical calls. On several occasions, no name had been picked out for the female babies, so there are a number of women in poverty-stricken areas in Oklahoma City whose name is Christine. Dr. Fair served a 2-year internship at OU Medical Center. After the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, he and most of his classmates applied for commissions to the armed forces. He was turned down, however, due to having a chronic orthopedic illness in his hips. After graduation from medical school, Dr. Fair expected to go back to Heavener to assist his father in his medical practice. However, with only 1 year of surgical training, he could do most of the surgery required for family practice. Now, the American Board of Surgery, however, required 3 years of surgical training, so Dr. Fair began to consider where he would go for the next 2 years to complete his surgical fellowship. Dr. Fair applied at the Mayo Clinic, which was considered the very best medical center in the world. He was accepted and became only the 3rd graduate of the University of Oklahoma School of Medicine to be accepted at Mayo Clinic, and he was the first to be granted a surgical fellowship. While at Mayo, Dr. Fair studied chest diseases at the University of Minnesota and earned a master's degree in surgery. His master's thesis was entitled "Mucus Production in the Primary Carcinoma in the Lung." Now that sounds interesting. In his 3 years of surgical training at Mayo Clinic, Dr. Fair specialized in thoracic surgery, an up-and-coming specialty. During his 3rd year at Mayo, Dr. Fair passed the written examination from the American Board of Surgery. He signed on for a 4th year, serving as an assistant to the surgical staff, running 2 operating rooms 4 days a week. It was during his 4th year at Mayo Clinic that he and his wife Christine decided to return to Oklahoma City, where he would establish a surgical practice with emphasis in thoracic surgery. At that time, there were no trained thoracic surgeons in the states of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Arkansas. There was only one in Dallas and one in Fort Worth. And so Dr. Fair bought a private practice in Oklahoma City and worked as a consulting physician for Southwestern Bell Telephone Company. He served on the surgical staff of Wesley, Mercy, St. Anthony's, VA, OU, and Children's Teaching Hospitals. He was also on the teaching faculty of the OU School of Medicine. In 1950, Dr. Fair passed the oral exam in the American Board of Surgery, and in 1951 he passed the oral examination of the American Board of Thoracic Surgery. He had just become only the 41st person in America to pass this exam. His private practice had grown beyond his expectations, and he began to become physically taxing, where he would have to spend increasing amounts of time standing on his feet that most surgical thoracic procedures required. After having thorough medical workups to determine the cause of his backaches, Dr. Fair was diagnosed with Paget's disease, a disease that changed the bony structure of the vertebra in the spine, a disease that could end up in paralysis. This caused him to reconsider his future as a thoracic surgeon. He knew he could not do thoracic surgery indefinitely or until retirement age. Now, although being turned down for military service three times during World War II, when the United States became involved in the Korean War, he once again offered his medical services to the military. He found that at this time there were no board-certified thoracic surgeons serving in any of the armed forces. In 1953, at the age of 38, after a few conversations with military personnel in Washington, D.C., Dr. Fair was offered the rank of major by both the Army and the Air Force. He would later select the Air Force and would start a thoracic surgical service at Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. After his tour of duty in the military, with his increasing physical limitations, Dr. Fair decided on a medical specialty in which he could sit rather than stand, and should he eventually be confined to a wheelchair, he could continue to practice. He chose to enter the study of psychiatry. Because he had received the very best surgical training at the Mayo Clinic, he also desired to receive the very best psychiatric training, and so he accepted a 3-year residency program at the Miniature School of Psychiatry in Topeka, Kansas, in July 1, 1955. His residency began with assignment to the VA hospital in Topeka, Kansas, and he was assigned on a ward that was of patients suffering with chronic schizophrenia. Of this rather interesting experience, Dr. Fair says this in his own words. There were 40 patients on the ward, and I'd never had any exposure to a human being who suffered with schizophrenia. I was totally ignorant of the manifestations and the behavior of those patients. About the 5th patient, I held out my hand and extended it to his. I said, "Hi, I'm Dr. Fair, your new doctor." He responded with, "You're Dr. Fair, our new doctor. Every time we change doctors, we get one poorer than the one we had before. It looks like this time we're scraping the bottom of the barrel." About 20 minutes later, I met another patient. His appraisal of me indicated that I not only was incapable and inadequate, but that my mother came from the canine species. His comments were flooded with profanity. About the 20th patient I saw was a huge black man, and as I extended my hand, he slapped it away. He had been saving up saliva, and he flooded my face with spit. By now, I was asking myself, what in the world have I walked into? If this is psychiatry, is this how I want to spend my professional life? Good question. During his 2nd year at Miniature School of Psychiatry, 4 prominent men and community leaders from Ponca City, Oklahoma, one of which was a doctor friend and medical school classmate, asked Dr. Fair to propose his coming to open a child guidance clinic in Ponca City upon his graduation. Well, at that time, he was intending to return to Oklahoma City to open a private practice, and he was not really all that interested in their offer. However, he was persuaded to come visit. Dr. Fair was surprisingly impressed with our small city of Oklahoma, impressed with the school system, the community support for mental health, and the educational level of the citizenry. as this was during the heydays of Conoco's research and development program, and in the words of one Conoco physicist, this was a time at Conoco where scientists with PhDs were a dime a dozen. On his return to Meningers, Dr. Fair asked the director, Dr. Carl Meninger, what a child guidance clinic was. Dr. Meninger stated that he thought there were only 2 or 3 child guidance clinics in the United States. Nonetheless, his final year of residency he spent was under the supervision of the Chief of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and this experience was pivotal in his decision to accept the offer to start a child guidance clinic in Ponca City. And so in February of 1958, Dr. Fair was hired director of K Guidance Clinic, which opened its doors in July 1, 1958. He would devote 26 hours weekly to developing the child guidance clinic and the remainder of his time to private practice. His yearly salary, by the way, was $15,000. You might want to think about that the next time you're complaining about your low salary. The K Guidance Clinic grew and prospered. In his own words, Dr. Fair says this: the growth and development of our guidance program came about because we were in the right place at the right time and had the widespread support of educators, the legal profession, the medical profession, the clergy, the leaders of the business and professional community. We were able to attract capable professional persons who took pride in the growth of our program. In his rather limited spare time, Dr. Fair was appointed to the faculty of the University of Oklahoma School of Medicine, where he supervised residents in psychiatry and community mental health. In April of 1963, Dr. Fair passed the oral examination for the American Board of Psychiatry. Over the next several years, staff and caseloads expanded rapidly, and satellite clinics were opened at St. John's College in Winfield, Kansas, Cali County Counseling Services in Ark City, counseling services at Northern Oklahoma College in Tonkawa, and Oklahoma State University. In 1970, K Guidance Clinic became Bi-State Mental Health Foundation and served 6 counties: K, Noble, Grant, Osage, Pawnee, and Payne, as well as Cali County in Kansas. In 1971, Bi-State leased this beautiful building that you see around you, and where we have occupied for the past 47 years. By 1972, the staff of Bi-State had grown to 104. In 1973, Bi-State received accreditation with the Joint Commission of Accreditation of Hospitals. In 1983, when Dr. Fair was 68, he asked Dr. Hamilton to take over his position as psychiatrist director, while Dr. Fair continued to keep a caseload for several years. And on May 22, 1989, the Bi-State Mental Health Foundation Board of Directors honored Dr. Fair by changing the name of the clinic to Edwin Fair Community Mental Health Center. As part of this celebration, Henry Bellman, the governor of Oklahoma, proclaimed May 22, 1989, Dr. Edwin Fair Day. The proclamation says this: the state of Oklahoma, proclamation, Dr. Edwin Fair Day. Whereas Dr. Edwin Fair has long been a visionary in the field of mental health, seeing the need for and the possibilities of the community mental health movement, and whereas Dr. Edwin Fair, through his efforts, helped to obtain funding and the resources for Bi-State Mental Health Foundation, a comprehensive community mental health center which has provided a wide variety of mental health services to thousands of citizens in north central Oklahoma. And whereas, in honor of efforts of Dr. Edwin Fair, Bi-State will be dedicated as the Edwin Fair Community Mental Health Center on Monday, May 22, 1989. Now therefore, I, Henry Bellman, Governor of the State of Oklahoma, by the authority vested in the office of Governor by the Constitution and statutes of the State of Oklahoma, do hereby proclaim Monday, May 22, 1989, Dr. Edwin Fair Day in the State of Oklahoma, in recognition of the accomplishments of Dr. Edwin Fair, one of Oklahoma's greatest mental health advocates. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the great seal of the state of Oklahoma to be affixed at Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, this 22nd day of May 1989, signed and sealed by Governor Henry Belton. In October of 1990, on his 75th birthday, Dr. Edwin Fair officially retired from Edwin Fair Community Mental Health Center. Upon his retirement, an article was written for Ponca City News that said this: Dr. Fair worked long and hard to bring quality mental health services to an area where they were largely unknown at the time. He sought especially to meet the needs of individuals who simply could not afford expensive private hospitals and private practitioners. These individuals were by far the majority of those seeking help, and sadly many had gone untreated due to a lack of viable alternatives. Even more than this, Dr. Fair brought a country doctor perspective to his medical practice that is not at all common in mental health. To his patients and colleagues, he was much more than a physician. He served as a confidant, a counselor, a father figure, a pastoral advisor, and a trusted friend. Finally, it said, Dr. Fair often remarked that our work is about helping people, first and foremost. Nothing else matters. For over 30 years, he brought physicians and therapists to Ponca City, steadily expanding services to our many and different varied needs. Edwin Fair Center has a rich heritage, and this heritage continues to push the center forward to meet even more demanding, diverse needs in our common today. So, go back to the beginning, folks. Back to the question of who is Edwin Fair? Who was Edwin Fair indeed? Obviously, he was more than just our founder. Hopefully, I've done some bit of justice to the strikingly unique and inspirational man who hired me out of graduate school in 1982, and he shared with me the dream of quality mental health care for those in our community that cannot afford it. Upon my hiring, Dr. Fair said this: Steve, I want you to know two things as you start your counseling career. Number one, our work is about people. We are here for one purpose, and that is to provide help to people who desperately need it but cannot afford it. We're not here to make money or a name for ourselves. These people deserve the very best care we can offer them, and this is what I expect of you. Number two, make no mistake, you will receive your counseling education, not in graduate school, but from each and every person that comes into your office. Each life that you touch touches you and teaches you lessons that you could not otherwise learn from textbooks. Your clients are your professors. They're your experts in your field. They will teach you what it's like to suffer with depression, panic attacks, manic depression, schizophrenia, and addictions. And so listen and learn from them. Finally, that's the dream that Dr. Fair hired me with, and that's the dream I'd like to pass on to my colleagues and to the staff. And so I thank you for listening to this fairly lengthy explanation of who Dr. Fair was and his legacy, and I hope that you will likewise pass this dream on to others. Thank you.